I'm sure you've all experienced this phenomenon before, where something has happened in your life or you're anticipating something, and all of a sudden it pops up everywhere. Other people have done the same thing or are about to do the same thing, or you see it in advertisements or on billboards or whatever it might be. Like you're going on a trip and then you hear about that trip all over the place. Or it happens especially when you get pregnant. And then it seems like the whole world is pregnant too. There are babies and baby things just all over. Well, it goes deeper than just experiencing and having other people have those experiences, because you might not notice this, but often what happens is those experiences you're hearing about that sound the same, they match your worldview, your expectation of what the trip or the meal or whatever it might be is like. So if you're really looking forward to this trip to Disney, say, then you're going to see a lot of great things about it. If you're not so excited about it, then you're going to start getting horror stories come through your news feed and all these bad things about waiting in line or who knows what. Has anybody seen Father of the Bride Part 2? Okay. So, some of you have. It's a very funny movie, and this is illustrated beautifully in that movie, where the parents have just married off their adult daughter. She is pregnant, and they're waiting in the doctor's office, expecting to hear the news that the mother of the bride is going through menopause, and it turns out she is also pregnant. And so you see the shock on their faces, and the father is shocked and horrified, and the mom is shocked but a little bit excited. And the illustration of what I've just talked about is beautiful. On the drive home, they're looking out their windows, and they see kids and parents everywhere. But you look out the dad's window, and all he sees are fathers chasing after multiple kids going in different directions, or babies spitting up all over, mass chaos, disaster, destruction. You never want to go through it. Look out the mom's window, and she sees mothers who are cradling their babies in their arms, pointing and looking at shop windows at the cute things, patting the dogs that are passing by. Totally different experience of what parenthood is like. I think that this whole phenomenon is the problem that we have with Christ the King Sunday. There are lots of people who would like to just avoid this Sunday in entirety, who want to just ignore the fact that we refer to Christ as King, because King is not a word that we want to use. And I get it. Our country was founded by people who abhorred the idea of king so much that they gathered armies and fought and spent their lives getting rid of the monarchy and its rule over us. And so we are a part of a country that has come into its own, avoiding the very mention of kings. You hear the word and you think monarchy, power, nepotism perhaps, classism, something that exists above and beyond and over everything else. And it's very little that is positive that's associated with that word. Well, the first century had very similar problems, because a king for them was just about all of those things: power, might, oppression, showing the strength of the kingdom and its ability to do whatever it wanted. Their worldview and experience pulls all of those things forward, so that when Jesus starts talking about the kingdom of heaven, And they start experience Jesus as perhaps being the king of the Jews. Well, all of those things come out. The problem is that very, very few of them have experienced the true kingdom, the one Jesus is actually spending his time talking about and trying to create. And so they can't see expressions of it or fully understand it. It's like the dad looking out the window who could not see what his wife was seeing, couldn't see the possibility that children might bring joy too. Well, Jesus has been talking his entire ministry about what his kingdom is like. But they hear kingdom and they think power and might. The Jews are expecting a king to come and save them, to vindicate them, so that they will be oppressed no longer. Rome is afraid, because if Jesus is talking about being a king, well, they know what that means and what that looks like, and it's not so good for them. So it's no wonder that this whole Christ the King thing is so complicated and convoluted, because no one can fully agree on what being the king of the Jews really means. But no matter what they think, it's really not what Jesus has in mind. For Jesus, king doesn't mean power, ruling over. It means welcoming all, embracing a new way of being and of life that raises up the oppressed. Some get it. The disciples, whose call stories show Jesus reaching out to them, and they answer and respond immediately. They can see this kingdom that he's promising and holding out to them. The people who he's healed, they get it. So many times in our scripture, Jesus says, he heals somebody and he says, okay, now don't tell anybody. And what's the first thing they do? They can't keep it in, because this kingdom that they have experienced, well, now they see it everywhere, and they have to talk about it, because that's the reality that they are living. It's everywhere. And there are people who have witnessed these healings who keep coming back for more. And then there's the criminal on the cross next to Christ, who knows perfectly well all that he has done wrong, that he has lived far outside this realm that Jesus is promising, and yet can see it, can hope for it so much that as he's crucified there, dying, he's asking Jesus to remember him when he comes into his kingdom. And Jesus uses his last breaths to model for us one final time the kind of king he's embodying. And he says, you'll join me. These people, they have experienced the Christ. They understand what a king and his kingdom can be. And they start looking for it, seeking it, and seeing it. In the synagogues, the streets, their homes, on the cross. So that's the challenge that I've placed for myself this Sunday, and I invite you into it. To reimagine what being a king looks like. Or perhaps just finding a better word for it. But more than the language, the challenge is to identify Jesus' presence in our lives. Who is Jesus for you? What rule, perhaps, does he have over your life, your heart, your experiences? And it may be different for each one of you. But the job, the task is to identify it. And once you have, well, then you start looking for it. You start finding it in expressions of other people, of creation, and the world around. And once you know what it is, well, it's that phenomenon all over again. You're going to see it popping up right in front of you. And the more you do that, the more each and every one of us does it, the more that kingdom that Christ has promised comes into being. So redefine, reimagine. See who Jesus is calling you to be and what he's calling you to do. And live into the possibility of a kingdom that looks totally different than any one we've seen before.